This is Captain Alex Thomson, class of 2014, and I want to give you some info. Okay, so a little bit of background. Again, my name is Captain Alex Thomson. I'm a 2014 grad with my undergrad. My bachelor's of science at the academy was in computer science. So right now I'm a cyber officer at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, and I'm currently living in St. Louis. And from 2015 to 2017, which was during my first full assignment, so it was after my first assignment was actually tech school. So after that, my first 3-year assignment, that's when I completed a master's in computer science through the University of Louisville. So that's my background. There's me in the picture with my wife, Emily. And so let's start with, should I get a master's degree? Should you get a master's degree? So up front, let's talk about the Air Force career impacts. I'm sure you guys have heard it plenty. Yes, currently a master's is not required, quote unquote, to promote up to the rank of colonel. But all that means is that your academic history is masked at the Central Promotion Board. So the people working the promotion board, they can't see what your academic background is, whether or not you have a master's. However, the thing to note is that your academic history and your record of that is not masked to everyone in your chain of command during your career. So therefore, completing a master's degree is still a delineator when it comes to racking and stacking you against your peers. So like in my first assignment, when quarterly award packages would come up, I could put on there that I was working on my master's, and some people couldn't. So obviously, it didn't really matter that it was masked at the promotion board because everyone the whole time can see it. And then additionally, these things change. So, we're going to get a new chief of staff pretty soon, and they could come in and just right away say, okay, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And now all of a sudden it becomes, required. Outside of the Air Force, civilian side, yes, a graduate degree definitely gives you the edge with prospective employers, and at the very least checks the box in terms of job applications, saying that you know your stuff. But also keep in mind that individual aptitude and work experience are what would get you hired, not how you look on paper. But that being said, if you're interested, as far as subjects go, my opinion is you should just pursue a master's if you're interested in one, and if it's in a subject that you're truly interested in. And for example, if you're looking to branch out to a different career field outside the Air Force, then a master's and that subject would be a really good way to kind of break into that layer foundation. So in terms of what to get your master's in, once you decide you want to get it, there's really no right or wrong answer. It's all up to you and how you want to use that credential in the future. And then when to start, earlier is always better. I would say anytime you're able to get going, because you're only going to be as busy as you are now. You're probably going to be busier later. But definitely wait until you've at least completed your tech school so that then you can focus onto those academics. And so let's go to the next slide. There we go. So applying for your master's. Not sure if everyone's familiar, but most programs require a GRE or GMAT test score. So this is just like the SAT and the ACT for undergrad. My personal opinion, it's a little bit, unless you're going for a really competitive program like Harvard MBA or whatnot, it's kind of a checkbox. It's just something you gotta have a score for that to apply. And so my advice on this is to take it as soon as you can, because a lot of the knowledge that's on the test is going to be pretty fresh in your brain from the academy. I kind of lucked out because I was sort of in the running to go straight into grad school after the academy. And so my advisor wanted me to take the GRE. I didn't know anything about it. I just took it. I got a pretty decent score. And then later on, I didn't have to take that test again because usually the scores are valid for 5 years. So this is one of those big hurdles, though, that keeps people from starting their program. They'll, 2 years into their career, they'll be like, I want to do grad school. They will have not taken this test, and then it'll take them like a whole year to take the test. So honestly, I would knock this one out as soon as you can. Maybe you can even take one, next week. Who knows? But yeah, that's pretty much for application-wise, GRE, GMAT, and those two are pretty much the same test. That's going to be pretty common. So getting that done. So cost. Obviously, this is a new topic to pretty much everyone. It was new to me since, thankfully, the academy, you don't have to worry about this type of stuff. It's all covered. Um, so for a master's, the average size of the program is that it's 36 credit hours, which credit hour is the metric that all cost and classes, that's how it's all divvied up. So an average master's program is probably 36 credit hours, which usually equals 3 credit hours per class. Part-time, that would be 2 classes in the spring semester, 2 classes in the fall semester, and 1 class over the summer. So usually like 5 classes or 15 credit hours per year, depending. The average cost would be $650 per credit hour. That's the average. I mean, ballpark like USC, for example, their cost for a private school is about $1,200 per credit hour. So 650 is definitely an average. And then multiply that together, and you end up with the average cost of $23,400 for the average master's degree out of pocket. So how do you get a graduate degree and get the Air Force to pay for it? Well, there's pretty much 2 ways. One that you're probably familiar with already is going to AFIT or doing some kind of related, hey, this is your assignment to go get your master's. Typically, that's all paid for by the DoD, by the Air Force. Typically, it requires you to do some kind of instructor follow-on after, where maybe you did AFIT, now you're an instructor at AFIT for the next 2 years after graduation. So that's all great if you're interested in the programs they offer. So look out for those. Don't be discouraged if you tried and didn't get it right out of the academy. I guarantee there's plenty of slots that go unfilled later on. So doing your first assignment and then going to AFIT is totally doable. Now, if you wanted to do your degree on your own, like I did, the Air Force offers tuition assistance, usually called MIL-TA. Then the assistance is $250 per credit hour. So keep in mind right there, that's not a lot of money. And then it adds a 2-year concurrent commitment at the end of the program. So if you want to think about it this way, whenever you finish your graduate degree, basically add 2 years, and that's your commitment. But then that commitment is concurrent with any other commitments you have. So, for example, in my case, I finished my my graduate degree in 2017, and then the way it kind of hashed out, I only extended, if I was going by it, I only extended my 5-year commitment by like 6 months. So that's how that works. Now, the moneymaker with TA, though, which we'll get into, is some schools and programs offer to match the MIL-TA by lowering their normal tuition. So they lower from whatever they were, like $800 per credit hour, down to $250. So then for you, it'd be $0 out of pocket. And so that's what happened with me. So we'll get into that in a bit. One disclaimer, though, I didn't really learn about this until later, but if you hear people say, the GI Bill, like I'm going to use the GI Bill, the post 9/11 GI Bill, I'm going to 5 and dive, and I'm going to use that to go to grad school or something like that. That's unfortunately not the case. For all of you who weren't prior enlisted who graduated, it takes 3 years to get 100% GI Bill. However, those 3 years, like you won't start accruing that benefit until after your 5-year commitment. So if you wanted to go to school using your GI Bill, using 100%, you would technically have to put in 8 years active duty to get that. So just keep that in mind. I heard a lot of people, I'm almost at 6 years here coming up next month. I heard plenty of people about 18 months ago saying they were getting out and we're going to use their GI Bill. Well, sorry, you don't have a GI Bill. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so how to find your program. Now you figured out, maybe it's going to cost money, maybe it's not. How do you even find one? So this was the criteria that I used to find my program. By all means, this was my opinion. You can do however you want to find it. MIL-TA will pretty much, cover any school. The only one that they aren't covering is University of Phoenix. But we'll get into that in a minute. So here was my criteria when I went out to look for my program. I already knew I wanted to study computer science, so I was looking for a computer science program. And then here's what I used. So number one, must be a brick and mortar school with most of the students in person, no fully online schools. I wanted just a school that no one would question on a resume. It wouldn't be like, what is this? I've never heard of this. No, it'd be brick and mortar school, most students there in person, so it can't be some kind of fully online school or some school where like it is a brick and mortar school, like an actual place, but only 2,000 people go there, but they have like 100,000 online students. I didn't want any of that. Must be regionally accredited. So that was kind of also something we didn't really have to deal with at the academy too much. There's a difference. There's two top accrediting bodies. There's nationally accredited and regionally accredited. It kind of sounds inverse, but regional accreditation is a higher standard, so that's the preferred. So that's what I went for. Speaking of accreditation, there's also your program could have an accreditation technically, and that's something you just have to look into. The only one I know off the top of my head, like if you were going for an MBA, that has its own. There's another accrediting body that accredits the program as well, and that can mean a lot depending on where you want to go. If you somehow went to a school that was regionally accredited, but their program for whatever, like their MBA program wasn't also accredited by this other body, then that would be kind of a waste. But anyway, next one, must be a public or private school, not for profit, kind of with the same as number one. So didn't want to go to anything like American Military University, Colorado Technical University. There's a lot that they don't sound like it, but they're actually for profit. I wanted a public or a private school. And then cost-wise, I wanted it to match the mill TA, so I didn't want to pay anything out of pocket. So I was thankful, and I found my program, and they said they would match the mill TA, and so then nothing out of pocket, which was pretty hard to find. Thankfully, most schools have a veterans, office, and you can talk to them, or you just got to kind of Google around. I wanted it to be a fully online program that I can complete outside of work with few to no campus visits. So mine didn't require any campus visits, and everything was online. I had to, there's a little bit of flexibility there. Like sometimes I had to call up professors and talk to them. I had to do Skype presentations. I had to do quite a bit. But again, realize the delineation here. The program itself, like there are people in person taking the program, but I am completing it online. It's not like an online school or anything like that. It was just the same as anyone else there. Thesis. So I wanted the option to do it or not do it. I wanted to figure it out later. I was just thankful in my program. I didn't have too much of an opinion either way, although keep in mind if you do want to do a thesis and you are doing part-time school, it's probably going to take a bit longer, probably like a year to do that, just the thesis part. I ended up doing a capstone instead, and that was a semester. So I wanted the program to be about 2 years long, which mine was. 2 to 3.5 is the average, though, so don't be discouraged for part-time. And then this was kind of like for fun, but I really wanted the school I went to be NCAA Division I, and that was purely just for like a little bit of name recognition. I didn't want to go to a place that met all the other criteria, and then it was still like, where I've never heard of this place. And so, and speaking of that, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like wondering, oh, what looks best on a resume? Like, is that important? And the answer is, I mean, it depends. It depends on what school, or what you want to do with it later, what jobs you might apply for. I will say baseline though, like if you go to a grad, you got your degree from the academy, so that's already huge. Like that's big. And then if you get another degree from a school that meets these criteria, you're going to be fine. There isn't going to be any kind of question. They're not going to throw your resume away. You're going to be pretty solid, my opinion. And so that was my criteria. All of these, it got confusing at times, trying to figure out if a school met certain ones of these. But all of them can be found on Wikipedia, or all the ones I starred. Like if you pull up any school's Wikipedia, you should be able to tell right away. And coincidentally, like USAFA, they met all those criteria, same thing. So that's kind of how I found my program. It took about, in terms of finding it, it took about a semester for me to like figure out I wanted to do grad school, find the program, apply, and then start. It was like in the fall that I did that, and then I started in the spring. So just kind of and that was without taking the jury. So just a heads up for how long this process might take. That's about how long it took for me. So that kind of covers everything. The last bit of advice I want to throw out there is once you do complete your program, definitely celebrate it. The first time I stepped foot on the Louisville campus was the week of my commencement, and although it was much different than my USAFA graduation, I had a great time celebrating with friends and family. So be sure to celebrate that as well, because it's definitely an accomplishment. And yeah, for any other information, feel free to reach out to me. There is my civilian email and my military email, or my Air Force email. And here's a couple links as well. This was my master's program, and there's some other programs through Louisville that match the MilTA. And then just for fun, there's my future desired MBA that I'm hoping to accomplish after I accrue the entire GI Bill.